Good afternoon and welcome back to Coffee Time with Lori. And today we have Phyllis Stanley from Warm Cozy. It's a children's charity and it's up here in Simcoe County. And you're based where in Victoria Harbour, technically? Are you
Just outside
classified
Victoria
as,
Harbour, up on the hill
yeah,
there.
Tay
Yes,
Township?
Tay Township. That's correct. Yes.
So now Phyllis started this with her husband, Brian, who was on camera a little while ago, but has now gone off to the side.
Yeah.
But how many years ago did you start this?
This is our 18th year.
Wow.
We started it 18 years ago. We'd moved from Milton and we really didn't know much about the area. And we moved, it was the beginning of the year, so it was winter time. And Brian went out on a day outing with one of our grandchildren, Carson, to, it was St. Marie among the Hurons. And he phoned me about an hour later and he said, "Oh, Philly, we've got a real problem here. There's a little girl who's just an awful pain. She's blood coming out at the over the heels of her little shoes. Her feet were so blistered, the blisters had burst. So I got the teacher on the phone. I found the child was wearing shoes 3 sizes too small and she had no winter clothing on. So we immediately got out. I went and got the child first aid, got her sorted, got winter clothing on her, and I immediately drove down to the wee village school. The three schools weren't joined in those days. Now you've got Wabasheen, Port McNicoll, and Victoria Harbour. Then it was the village school.
Yeah.
So I went in and explained to Liz, who'd been the secretary for 35 years. I said, "Look, we're new to the area. This is what's just happened. Is this a one-off?" And she said, "I think you'd better sit down." So I sat down and listened, and she told me the history of the whole area. And I went outside and I sat and had a good cry. And I thought, right, this is why we're here.
Yeah.
And it's about the journey. And so
Yeah.
Warm and Cozy was born that day. And for the first, 5 years or so, it was the village because I had to raise the money myself. We're pensioners, we're not
Hmm.
loaded with money. And I insist on buying new things for the children because they're broken children. They're
Yeah.
children that have fallen through the cracks or they're born into very, very difficult circumstances. And bless their little cotton socks, they don't have an identity. You see them walking along the street with their hoodies up and their face always looking at the ground. That's
Hmm.
because in their subconscious, they tell themselves, well, if I can't see you, then you can't see me. And
Hmm.
I've actually had children say to me that they're a vapor, they're just a fog, and they want to fade into the walls as they walk the school halls. How tragic
Oh,
is that?
that's
So our
sad.
goal has always been to help every single child to feel equal to their peers, to
Hmm.
gain dignity and self-respect, but most of all, to gain hope.
Yeah.
Because when a person has hope, magic can happen. They can dare to
Oh,
dream,
oh,
and it's
definitely.
happening. Our children are graduating rather than becoming drug dealers. The little girls are getting into gymnastics and sports rather than getting pregnant.
Hmm.
They're getting local jobs, they're going to college, and yes, they're even going to university. And
Oh,
one of the
wonderful.
first children, Sarah, she's two international charities of her own now. So
Oh.
it does work. And that's why I take the prices off, but I do leave the new tag on so that
Yeah.
that needy child sees that. And it's the first and probably only thing they've ever had in their life that was new and just for them. And
Hmm.
that one random act of kindness can actually save a life.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
I was speaking one time at the beginning, the Multicultural Centre in Midland used to have an open mic on a Saturday from 1 till 3. And I would go down and sing a few Irish songs, and then I would speak for a few minutes and talk to the people about what was happening and pass the hat and that sort of thing. And that would help us to go forward. And this gentleman came up to me afterwards and he said, "You definitely need to hear my story." So we went further to the back and I sat down with him and he said, "I was one of 6 children and we didn't live in a house. We lived in a barn. My mother had the brain age of a 12-year-old and my father was an alcoholic who beat everybody when he did come home." He says, "We were uneducated, had no food, no shoes." And he said, "My older sister used to run 3 miles across the farmer's field in the winter to beg for porridge. It's like something out of Charles Dickens,
Oh, yeah.
asking for gruel." And he said him and the sister would hide the younger siblings before the Children's Aid could get them because we're going back 50 odd years and I think things
Yeah.
were really bad then.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, when he was 11 years of age, the same farmer took him on his own to a local town. And he said to him, "You can buy one thing, one thing." And he said he always dreamed of having a pair of his own leather shoes. And as he's telling me, he's holding up these imaginary shoes and he's smelling the leather, and the tears start to run down his cheeks as he's holding them. And that memory is flooding his soul. Of course, I'm sitting there trying to sob quietly as I'm listening to this. And he said, that farmer will never know that that one random act of kindness saved me from taking my own life. He said, I got into the city, I became a drug dealer, I became a very bad boy. And he said, I did a drug deal with the bikers and I didn't have the money to pay them. And they put a hit out on him. And he said
Oh,
that they were going to come and kill him. So rather than that, he was going to take his own life. So he said, just before he stuck the needle in his arm, all of a sudden, that same feeling completely flooded him. And he felt such a joy that he just threw things in the bag and got out of Dodge. He ended up getting a job sweeping the floors in a wood mill. And a few years later, he was the manager of the wood mill. He taught himself how to read and write from the dictionary and the phone book, in those days, a phone book. And he said to me, looked at me, we were both just sobbing, and he said, don't ever stop doing what you're doing, because he said, you will never know. One single act can truthfully save a person from taking their own life. And I've been told that by actual children that we have helped over the years. So,
oh,
it's an honor and a privilege. And we also, before COVID, we were going into the alternative school. Now, that's a secondary
mhm,
school for teens who are from 16 to 21. And
mhm,
God bless them, a lot of them haven't been to school in the winter because there's no winter clothes or boots or anything.
mhm.
And we would teach them basic life skills as well as clothing them, and teach them how to cook, how to speak without saying the F word every other word, and how to dress for an interview and stuff. And so this day, I had them, there was 26 of them, and they were sitting in sort of a big oval shape, all with the hoodies up, all looking down at their knees, nobody looking at me. And so I just said quietly to them, you know, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there, each and every one of you are thinking, oh, there's that wee lady, that's Phyllis, who gives us the nice clothes, and that's lovely. And then I stopped, and then I said, but you're also thinking, what the hell does she know about my life? Silence. And I said, so before we go any further, let me tell you a wee bit about my life. So I told him about my life. And all of a sudden, bit by bit, you saw the faces coming up. And within about 5 minutes, the hoods were down. And every time after that, that I opened that door, which used to be the old Tim Hortons at the bottom of Midland Avenue, to go in there, you'd hear them yelling, oh, it's Phyllis. And they'd all run up to hug because they knew that somebody understood and somebody cared about them. God bless them. So
Mm.
that's what we do, and that's why we do it.
That's wonderful. I mean, it is such a worthy cause. I mean, children should not go to school with no winter coats or winter clothing or no boots or anything. I remember my mom when she said when she was working years ago, she used to have those plastic boots that
Yes,
strapped over the shoes.
yes, yes,
She used
yes.
to stuff them with newspaper because she got us clothing and warm boots and everything, but she did without.
I know.
So it's hard when you don't have the money to provide.
I
Now,
remember it's I remember one day I was delivering a pile down to each of the children would get I used to use the great big Santa sacks, and there'd be a
mhm,
tag on them with the teacher's name, etc. So I was delivering a whole pile down there, and I'd also started a breakfast program. And the vice principal, said to me, Phyllis, there's a child here who you could help. And I just needed to see them for just a second, and I would know the sizes, right? And
yeah.
here's this child coming to school in the snow, barefoot. This is Victoria Harbour, in the snow barefoot with a pair of like somebody's silky had been shorts, but really short shorts, and a wee short t-shirt, no clothes. That child was living in a cardboard box. His
Oh
mother
my
ran off and
heavens.
left him, and his father was in jail. So
Oh,
you'd say, how can that be in this country? How can that be? But
very
people don't
easily.
talk about it. They go along like this. Well,
Yeah.
that's not my fault and whatever. And God
Hmm.
bless them, they don't realize they're privileged to live in an area, to share, to reach out and touch. There's an
Hmm.
old hymn that I found actually in a Presbyterian hymn book: reach out and touch the soul that's lonely, reach out and touch the seeker unaware. Reach out and touch the brother that hates you, or this one that and let the love and the power of God shine through you.
Hmm.
Let God be alive in us. Let us make it count, you know? And
Hmm.
it's simple, nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with anything like that, but
No.
understanding we're privileged to have this journey. I
Hmm.
believe that each one of us came with an invisible backpack on our back and with custom-made stuff in it to experience. They're unique just for ourselves.
Hmm.
And it's not that we're being punished, although I think sometimes going through it, we can feel like we're being punished.
Yeah.
But when you get beyond it and you look back, we look and say, I'd never have the courage to ask for that now. Never.
Yeah.
But I've walked in those moccasins. I know what that feels like.
Hmm.
Isn't that right?
That's very
So
true.
it is true. And it doesn't matter whether it's a house that's burned down or
Hmm.
suffering of one kind or another, you know, it's I believe it's not only about the journey or what we even learn about the journey or in the journey. It's
Hmm.
what we do with what we learn. You can
Hmm.
take that knowledge and put it in a bookshelf and dust it off every now and then, or you can
Hmm.
take it down and actually make every day count.
Hmm.
You
That's
know,
true.
we
And
wear
now
these we wear
I
these wee brooches. See this wee wing thing? Can you see this? And
no.
it's a wee angel's wing
Oh, we
thing,
angel thing.
a little
Oh,
angel thing.
yeah.
And
Oh,
we
that's
wear those,
beautiful.
and I'll say to people that I meet, there's the little angel's wings. And when you look down at it, remember that God's love is the power beneath the wings. He lifts you high, or you can shelter below them, and you're never alone.
Hmm.
Never alone. And that's why I do what I do.
And you do such a fantastic job. Now, I remember, was it last year or the year before that you reached out for things for seniors that were
Yes,
living?
that was
Do you
yeah.
still do that as well?
Well, we do. You know, uh, there's also a team down in, I think it's the Penetang. I don't know whether it's the Lions or the other one. And there's a chap there, and he was helping they had a group going together that were helping the Ukrainian families coming over.
Hmm.
And we've
Hmm.
helped five of them.
Hmm.
And I would take them out and we would completely wardrobe the family. And what was lovely is you'd see the groups all coming together. I'd say it's like
Hmm.
a bracelet on your arm. Each
Hmm.
one is a link. And when
Yeah.
we join together, we've got that circle that becomes very powerful and strong. And that's when magic happens. And so
Hmm.
we did that. And yes, I got a call from, and it was actually the Lions of Port Severn. And some of the ladies from that are from Wabashine. There's only two or three. And Monica Marsh, wonderful lady. And she said, Phyllis, I go down there and I was taking some knitting wool and etc. into the residential care home in Wabashine. And she said, bless their hearts, she said, a lot of them don't even have a blanket on their bed. And it was a privately owned place and not government funded, but privately owned, and the people were not very well taken care of. And so I just immediately we jumped on the bandwagon, and um, we got brand new blankets, and I went to the local churches and spoke and
Hmm.
asked the people to go home and sort out their closets. And I
Hmm.
said, with people, adults of every size, and track pants, cozy, sweat tops, things that are
Hmm.
cozy and that are gently used, please bring them. And we got
Hmm.
them all down, and it was coming up to Christmas. And so my friends baked cookies and went down and sang Christmas carols and all. And they were absolutely delighted. We brought so many that they've got a big storage closet now where they
Oh,
can help
great.
and do that. So yes, and we also get emergency calls on a regular basis, and we don't hesitate. We never question.
Hmm.
We've never said no.
Oh, that's great. Now, how far do you actually go? I know, excuse
Yeah,
me, Penetang, Midland, Port, Victoria
we
Harbour,
go from
Wabashine.
Wabashine. It's nearly a sort of a triangle. We go from Wabashine, Port McNicoll, Victoria Harbour, Midland, of course, down to Penetang, out to Honey Harbour, over to Lafontaine, and sort of back. So it's like
Oh,
that,
okay. So it's like a
right?
triangle.
It is a triangle, yes. And we help the children from 14 schools and the Rosewood Women and Children's Shelter, and then the emergency cases that we get, and which are quite a lot,
Hmm.
quite a
Now,
lot.
who contacts you from the for the emergency ones? Is it
Whoever is,
churches?
whoever, we're quite well known. So
Hmm.
people will call me or they'll email me and I immediately answer. I check my email several times a day. So it
Hmm.
could be dozens and dozens of different people who know about
Okay.
it. Let's say contact Phyllis. And so people will contact me and we immediately deal with it. And often we're back within that same day with the
Hmm.
stuff because we don't question. As long as I have their sizes and I know their gender, uh, we go and do it. That's just it.
Hmm. That's
And
great.
yeah.
Now, what do you look for? Like, if somebody wants to donate
Mm,
clothing, what
mm.
do you suggest for clothing? Would you prefer like cash so that you can go and get the stuff because you know what
Well,
they need? Or,
yes. What I do when we do a buy, I do the buying. We've changed how we do things over the years. Um, Prior to COVID, what I would do is the secretaries from the schools would send me lists and I would go out shopping on the lists. And then we would bag the stuff, maybe 30 or 40 big bags at once, and take them to the school and they would be donated there. And then COVID
mhm,
changed the whole world, as we all know.
yeah.
And so um, the secretaries were still going into the schools. So I contacted the secretaries and I said, look, we know the need is maybe even more so than before. You know the needy. Why don't I bring the goods to you and you change one of your change rooms into like a wee shop
Hmm.
and then you bag, I'll even give you the big bags and then phone the families and get them to come up at a certain time and pick up their bags. Well, it was so successful that it's just expanded. So each of the schools now has like a wee shop.
Oh,
And in
cool.
fact, with the big secondary school, it's half a classroom and it's studio
Really?
warm and cozy. Yes.
Oh, wow.
I'm not kidding you. And so I had a storage unit rented in the harbour and it was packed to the roof with my rubber bins. And I also had a tent here and I had another 50 bins in the tent. And that's
Oh,
all been distributed within the last month.
oh, wow.
So I buy when the stuff goes, apart from the emergency stuff, I
Yeah.
buy when the stuff goes on sale because
Hmm.
I always buy good quality and I
Hmm.
will get, it starts with about 40% off up to 80% off. And
Hmm.
I'll go and buy in bulk. I'll buy
Hmm.
everything they have. And also, I've got Peter, who owns the local giant Tiger, is wonderful. They're
Hmm.
very good to us. And Michael, who owns an Irish chap, owns the local Canadian Tire store. He's good as well. And so that's how we do it. And
Okay.
it's always new. So you said about the money. People can donate through canadahelps.org on
Hmm.
your computer. You can go in, put in warm and cozy with a Z, cozy, and you can put in a one-time donation, a monthly donation. We've one little lady donates $5 a month, bless her. And or it can be an annual thing, and they instantly give you a tax receipt.
Hmm.
You can do that, and then that comes to us. That enables me to know what it goes into the bank. We take no payment, no wages, nothing like
Hmm.
that. The money goes to the needy, to the children, and that's really the best way.
Hmm.
Although if people want to donate, right now it would be boots. I would say we need
Hmm.
children's boots. Boots are not cheap,
No, they're
and
not.
they're just not. The average child's boots are around $60,
Yeah.
and and when we do over 1,000 children, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's
That's
a lot.
huge.
It is huge. So if people, wanted to buy a pair of children's boots, that's great, or several pair, or donate the money to Canada Helps, I can go then and get them at a good price.
Hmm.
And then I can get more for the money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we've got our
Yeah.
bookkeeper, Mary. She does all the bookkeeping. Everything's above board. There's nothing jiggery pokery, nothing, crooked or anything. It's all very
Mhm.
straight. And it just works. And it's grown from that one little girl to 14 schools. Who would have thought that?
Really. Have you ever talked to that little girl now? Like, she's grown
No,
up and
I haven't. And I don't see the children remember because it's never been
hmm.
about me. Now, there have
Yeah.
been times over the years I've been called down for certain situations, and one
Hmm.
of them was pretty special. Again, it was Victoria Harbour. And this girl, we had clothed completely wardrobed her. And if the child needed completely wardrobed, on the email would be like a little star or something. So I would know it's more than a snowsuit and boots and hats and mitts. That
Hmm.
child needs pajamas, needs everything a child would wear.
Hmm.
And that's okay. So we'd done that with one of the children. And the principal actually phoned me and said, Phyllis, you have to come down. So I went down. And if you remember the little school, I don't know if you were ever in it, you walked in and you've got the square sort of waiting area and the two offices off to the side. So they're the principal and the vice principal standing, and this little girl's there, grade 7. And she has put together two of those big, call that cardboardy stuff. It's different colors
Oh,
you get.
Bristol board.
Two
Bristol
big
board.
red Bristol boards stuck together, And all over them, front and back, she's got sticky things. I love you, thank you. The whole thing's covered in them. Well, it turned out that this child didn't speak. They'd never heard her speak a single word. She'd been so traumatized in her little life that she no longer spoke. And it took her 3 weeks, apparently, to prepare this. And
Oh,
she handed me this, and they're standing crying. And I'm thinking, remember, I didn't know the story at the time.
yeah.
And they're standing there, and I'm thinking, this is lovely. I wonder why they're crying. And they handed me this, and the first word she said out of her wee mouth was, "Thank you."
Oh,
And it's the
now I'm
first
going to
word,
start
yeah,
crying.
the first word she said, and we don't know if it was years. And and so of course, I was overwhelmed with this beautiful work of art, bless her. And then I brought a bag for a little 5-year-old, and I asked this little girl's name. The first one was Catherine. So I asked Catherine, would she bring the 5-year-old round? And it was the first little classroom right beside the office, really. And it took her 3 tries to walk round to do it. And if you'd have seen the two of them, her holding the hand of the little 5-year-old, and she brings her in, and I gave the bag to Catherine to give to the five. Well, if you'd have seen their faces, because not only would I put the new clothing, and this clothing I put in was lovely. And I'd always put something pretty in the top with a wee toy of something girly or something nice.
Yeah,
But honest to goodness, it was just a joy. I'll never forget the picture on their little faces when they opened that and they saw them, oh, and
yeah,
I'll never forget that. And often wonder about her and pray for her and hope that life turned around for that child because
yeah.
that must have been hell that she lived through.
Oh
And the
gosh,
other one, I
yes.
was speaking in the Presbyterian Church in Victoria Harbour not long after that, and the minister said to me, "Oh, Phyllis, there's a family coming from the States. They want to meet you." And I said, "From the States? What? How can that be?" And they said, "No,
That's
no,
not part of the triangle.
that's right. That's right. They're at a gymnastics thing." I said, "Oh, all right." And it was a very bad winter, snowy day. And so, right enough in the middle of the service, then I saw the family coming in, whatever, that was grand. So after the service, went out to the back and had a wee cup of tea. So then the family came in, and this beautiful girl came up and she grabbed my hand with both her hands and she's shaking it and said, "I had to touch you. I had to meet you." I said, "Lovey, do I know you?" She says, "I'm your Sarah." I said, "Are you, pet?" I said, "How do you know me?" "Oh," she says, "you saved my life." I said, "Pardon?" She says, "This wonderful godly family recently adopted me, and the reason I didn't kill myself was because of you." She said, "My adoption was the fastest in Canadian history, 6 months from beginning to end." And she
Oh
said, "What I
wow.
lived through, there are no words to describe. But I knew that somebody somewhere loved me enough to give me my big sack when I needed it. And it always came, and it was so beautiful. And I knew I had to live." That's the girl that has the two international charities. She went to
Oh,
university and she travels the world. That's my Sarah. So how could I
oh,
ever stop?
oh gosh, no, you can't.
That's,
I
that's
mean,
her story. That's, amazing. Just
that
amazing.
is.
Yeah.
What are Sarah's charities?
Oh dear. You know what? I don't know. I know she was involved in opening two orphanages. One was somewhere in Africa, out in those countries anyway.
Hmm.
I haven't spoken to her mummy for probably 4 or 5 years, so I don't really know now.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not involved because I'm involved with so many, so much. I have to let it go like this. I have to,
Yeah.
because you're so focused on the now and what you have to
Hmm.
do now. And then I hear back from people or whatever.
Hmm.
It's a strange life I live. It's
But a
okay.
blessed one, that's for sure.
Well, yeah. I was supposed to die 3 years ago. I had very major open heart surgery and my heart was stopped and they worked on me for 11 hours. And I shouldn't have survived it. I'm the only one in Canada that's got two TAVR valves, one inside their other in their aorta, in their heart. It's the main valve in your heart. And he couldn't get that one out and he had to put another one inside, the first one. So the surgeon told me that 2 or 3 months afterwards. And the 4 or 5 days after the surgery, the anaesthetist came upstairs and he said, "I had to come and see you because," he said, "you shouldn't be alive." He said, "You were gone a very long time, 11 hours without no heartbeat." And he said, "I had a very hard time bringing you back." And I says, "Well, you see, I'm back because my last words were very simple. And I just said to God, Lord, if you bring me back, I promise whatever I have left, I'll spend every moment of my time doing your work. And I just smiled at him and he just looked and he couldn't speak because it's true.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not special. I'm just an ordinary person and I'm privileged to do what we do. And I try to let people know that, it doesn't have to cost money. A smile can change your
Hmm.
life. Holding a
Hmm.
door from somebody, just helping somebody lift a grocery bag, or just a random act of kindness. If everybody would try every day to look for a purpose, just even one thing, it
Yeah.
also makes them feel happier. It
Oh,
changes their
yeah.
vibration and their frequency, and then
Hmm.
they'll want to do more because it makes them feel so good. And it
Hmm.
changes the whole energy in the place. So thoughts do become reality, and
Hmm.
you can help people to think differently and it
Hmm.
changes their whole spectrum. It changes
Oh,
everything.
yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
So when I try to teach children about doing what we do and giving them self-esteem, I think that's so important. One of
Hmm.
the children that I helped was again Victoria Harbour, and this child had wore the same two items of clothing every day for 3 years. His mummy was a single woman and she was a bus driver, school bus driver. That was the only money going into the house. So there was no money for any clothing. And he wore an old pair of those plastic shoes that were all falling apart. And the top had originally been like a green velour zipped thing, and it was so
Hmm.
washed out you couldn't tell what color. And the pants were all frayed old track pants. So I could tell that he was an 8 to 10, and I immediately went out and wardrobed the child, and he got three of our big bags. Well, those three bags were sat in the office for 3 weeks. He didn't feel worthy to take them home. So they had to call the mummy in and she took them home. It was still another 3 weeks. And then he started to wear the clothes. Well, I get a call 2 or 3 weeks later saying, Phyllis, you better come down here. The snowsuit, you've got the pants with the bib thing and then the zip
Yeah.
jacket. Of course, the zips right up. Well, he refused to take the jacket off and he had it constantly zipped right up to his chin, even in school, and the sweat rolling off the child, and he would not take the jacket off. So I came down, and that day it was their wee Christmas concerty thing. So they were all in the main hall, and he was sitting, I could pick him out immediately. He's sitting up at the front with his snowsuit and all on. And I went and brought him out and I said, Lovey, you and I are going to make a deal. I'm shaking your hand here. And I'm saying to you right now, if anybody touches your things, you and I are going shopping and you're going to pick out whatever you want. And all of a sudden, you see the smile on his face and the zip comes down. So he loved that so much. He appreciated that so much that he would not unzip that. He sweated every day, all day, because he appreciated what he got. That child will never forget that. You know what I mean?
No, and they won't. They never will because
No,
that's an act of kindness towards them that they're not aware. They're not, what do
expecting.
I want? Yeah, exactly.
They're not
Because
expecting it
people don't do that for them. They look at them and they want to kick them right to the side to the curb.
or use them
Yeah.
and abuse
Oh,
them.
definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
And just like the man who met me at the beginning said about the pair of leather shoes, that saved his life because nobody had ever done anything kind for him
Hmm.
ever. And here he is now. He's in his late 50s now, and he writes music and he's still going, still helping people. And at nights he teaches people to read and write, and has done for years because of what he went through in his childhood.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's weird that, certain things that's, like his shoes, that was what triggered him to want
yeah,
to not kill himself. And just
yeah.
something that we take for granted every single
Right.
day.
He had no shoes, you remember. They had
Yeah.
no shoes. They had no shoes. Winter or summer, they were barefoot. They were
Oh, that's
barefoot.
a
Can you
shame.
imagine living in this country as a child with nothing to wear on your feet and living in a barn?
That's that's a sin. That really is.
Well,
That's not right.
some of the stories are so horrendous you wouldn't believe that it's happening here, but it does happen. And the thing, I'll tell you this, Laurie, and it's absolutely true. The most needy in our society will never ask for help, and
Oh,
that's
they
because they
won't.
don't feel worthy. They
Yeah.
simply don't feel worthy, and
Hmm.
that's it. They have
Yeah.
no self-esteem because they have no identity. They don't think
Hmm.
they're worthy
They've
of
been
being
kicked
good.
down on the ground and
They don't
They're
feel they're worthy. And they look at the other children who are dressed in their nice clothes, and especially those that don't wear a uniform, they wear ordinary clothing, and they just
hmm
look that they'll never be that person and they're not worthy to be that. And all they get no nourishment at home, either
mm-mm,
emotionally or physically, even proper food, and there's no love or compassion. Those children
hmm
never know what it says like to get a hug. They never know to be told that they're loved. They don't know what it's like to be tucked in at night by a loving
hmm
hand. That's just tragic.
It is. We shouldn't be having that in this day and age.
No, we
I
should not.
mean,
We
it
should
should
not.
never have ever happened.
No,
But
and
I mean,
now
like
we
we're a
have,
country that
oh,
should pull together, but
absolutely right. And it can pull together. And we live in a great community here, and
hmm
we've experienced it ourselves, our family, with what we went through. And I can tell you that Brian and I wouldn't have made it through if it hadn't been for this community. When our Brian almost died in the fire, and our family were badly burned in Carson, we spent a year and a half. Carson was in hospital nearly 2 years in the burns unit in Sunnybrook, and we would be down there for about 10 days, and then we'd have to come up here just to feel the energy and the compassion and the love. That was our fuel to go back down and face it again. And that went on and on and on. And I can tell you, that's how we made it. That's how
wow.
we made it through. Carson's had 43 major surgeries, 12 to 15 hours each, and he's not finished yet.
Oh
And
my
so amazing
heavens.
young man. He's 22 now, and he had 9 amputations. And yeah, he's just amazing young man. And God has
Oh
gifted
wow.
him. He's just amazing young man. So we're privileged to have suffered. It is, do you know what it's like, Laurie? It's like you become like the willow tree. The
Mm-hmm.
willow tree may look wispy, but the willow tree can bend in the storms of life. The
Mm-hmm.
big thick trees with the trunks, they can be ripped up in a storm and you see them cracked or lying, but the willow, not the
It
willow.
always stays the same.
Isn't
You
that
see
right?
the wind, the leaves and that going like that, and up
That's it
and down, and
exactly.
heavy storms, but you never see them come down.
No, that's it. Well, that's what working through pain and suffering does.
hmm
And getting to the other side and looking back and saying, I wouldn't have the courage to ask for it, Lord, but I'm
hmm
so glad that I'm here and that I'm not blaming anybody and I'm understanding what that journey has been about. And
hmm
now I can truly understand what the natives said. You want to know how I feel? You walk
hmm
a mile in my moccasins. And
Yeah.
I've been privileged to witness many miracles. And I know that miracles truly do happen. I'm writing a book
I
about it
was just
now.
going to ask about that because
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
talking to you and you were saying
yeah.
about miracles do happen, and I do believe it.
Oh, they happen on a regular basis, and
hmm
I'm writing. I'm up to about 84 right now that I've personally witnessed, and I mean it's just mind-boggling. And one simple one about a few years ago, we had 40 bags going out to Tay Shores,
hmm
and Lois came. Reverend, do you know Lois Brown? Reverend Lois.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
Lois is on our board. She's part of our team
Yeah.
one. So Lois lands in. And she says, "Oh my glory, fella, there's a pile of bags at the bottom of the stairs, bags the whole way up, pile of bags." I said, "Lois, we're short 29 pairs of children's boots, and each one had the tag, and I had a list of all the sizes. So I said, come on down, we'll get the kettle on and have a cup of tea." So we get the cup of tea, and we're sitting. I said, "So we'll have to talk to the boss for a minute." So we talk to the boss and we say a wee prayer, just chat to God, and said, Lord, I have this list here, and we need these 29 pair of boots. So I'm going to thank you right now in advance for bringing them. And that was it. And we went on chatting about something else, and that was it. So that's to me what faith is. You don't look back, it's God is dealing with it.
hmm
So that was today. Well, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So 10 o'clock the next, I get a phone call. I'll tell you who it was from. Do you remember the chap that owned Bam Beach Glass? I think
Yeah.
what was his name? He's just recently retired. He sold it over about a year or two ago. Oh, shoot, I forget. He belonged to the Penetanguishene Rotary Club. He phoned me and said, "Phyllis, I've got a wee delivery for you. Can I pop over?" I said, "Certainly, lovey." So over he comes. He's here about noon and he has a young lady with him. And in the come, and I says, "What are you bringing me?" He says, "Well, that's why I have my friend here with me. She has to tell you what happened." I said, "Oh, right. Come on. I live in a world that's a bit odd." So they came down, we get the cup of tea. I says, "What have you got seriously?" He says, "Well, I'll leave it over to her to tell you." She said, "Well, last night after I said my prayers," she said, "I felt God speaking to me and he wanted me to write stuff down. And he wrote down and told me that I was to phone." your man here and tell him that they were to go shopping the next day and to bring me 29 pairs of children's boots. And he even gave her the sizes to buy. And she phoned him immediately. This is late at night, about 11:30 at night, and told him, well, I just told you. The 9 o'clock the next morning, they were at Walmart with their list, buying all the 20. They were able to go one and put the boots right into each bag. And we all delivered them over to Tay Shores. That
Oh
wasn't
my.
even 24 hours after Lois and I prayed. Nobody else knew about it but us.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's
And
true. That's the sort of
that's
thing that happens. Another time, last year, was it last year? I had said my prayers and I felt God speaking to me. And I said to Brian, oh, Brian, God wants me to go down to the big lady's shop. I'm to buy a coat of every size. I'm to take it to the shelter. Brian said, well, all right then. He's very good. So the next day we drive down to Pennington's in Aurelia. And
hmm
I told the manager, I said, well, you'll think I'm nuts, but I felt God told me to come and I'm to buy a coat of every size. I think they kept from 14 to 5X. So
hmm
she and her colleague went and had two buggies piled with beautiful coats. And I think there was 40 or 50% off. There was a good big sale on. So they came up with the two buggies piled high. And I said, much as that? She rings them up. Oh, she says, even with the sale price, that's $1,200. And I said, oh, all right, that's a lot of money. So I had about 10 seconds in that time and I had to decide. I remember thinking clearly, now, Phyllis, you have to decide, was that your imagination? Because that would buy a lot of snowsuits.
hmm
Or was that God speaking to you and directing you with what he wanted you to do? Now, knowing that whatever decision I took, there'd be a domino effect, because there's always a domino effect.
hmm
And so I remember saying, ring it through. So I paid the $1,200. They walked out and he showed Brian the receipt and he went, all right. So we drove home and I came in and the first thing I did, I have a little small iPad. Honestly, the first thing I did, opened the iPad and right there was a notification from CanadaHelps.org. And it was a family who I don't know. And you get one guess how much they donated.
1200.
$1,200. Now, is that not an odd amount of money? I could see 100 or a thought, but 1,200. So I took the receipt because their time gets stamped. And
hmm
there was the time, and I pulled up the Canada Helps thing, and it was time stamped. And they both were exactly the same time. Exactly the same time.
Oh
So
my.
I went in and I got the man's email and I immediately wrote to him. And he immediately responded and said, Phyllis, I'm crying as I'm writing this. I'm so privileged that our family was able to do this. And I immediately wrote back and said, no, thank you and your whole family for letting God touch you to do this. This is what's happening. So anyway, I contacted, all the stuff went out to Rosewood and Helen Higgins, she runs the place there. And she said, Phyllis, I have to phone you. Everybody's crying here. Everybody in the shelter got a brand new coat. The staff are crying. The women are crying. She said, that's never happened before. And I said, well, you need to know the story. So I told her what I've just told you. She says, oh, can I tell the staff? I said, absolutely. God did it. It's not me. It's a
hmm
miracle. But
hmm
that's the sort of thing that happens to us.
Wow.
Honestly,
That is amazing. You should write a book about that.
I am writing a book.
Oh, are you?
I'm
Oh,
writing a
good.
book. Yes, I
Oh,
have
good, good,
Into
good.
the Light. And I'm thinking, and if I said to Brian yesterday, it's supposed to be a series of 4 books. And the books are to be about um helping everyone to understand that honestly, miracles are real and it
hmm
can happen to everybody and anybody. And it's
hmm
about understanding the power of your brain. And it's a big magnet, but it's a transmitter and a receiver. So
hmm
being careful about what you permit yourself to think, it's very important. And
hmm
teaching them how to do it and how it works. And it's simple in its complexity, but it is really simple. So that's what I want to do. And then our miracles will all be there for them all to read and to see and to help people to think, goodness gracious, well, if that can happen, maybe it can happen to me. Well, of course it can.
It
Of
can.
course it can.
I
And
mean, I know so many people who they say they don't believe in miracles because nothing ever good happens to them.
yes, yes.
You have to put it out there. You have to believe. You
Well, they
have
don't
to,
understand. You see, Laurie, they don't
yeah.
understand what actually faith means. I remember my mummy was an amazing woman. She was a bit like Mother Teresa. I was raised with her, and I was raised with people who were drunk, people who were broken, people who were injured, all in the house, and mummy nursing them and feeding them, and daddy would run them home and they tuck them into bed. That was the norm. That's the way I was
Mhm.
raised. And I thought everybody's mother was like that. I didn't realize that that wasn't the case. But
Hmm.
and Mummy's had this amazing faith from she was a little child, and I said, "Oh, Mummy, I would love to understand what that means, but to me, it's just a word with a few letters in it." And so my journey began when I was about 17, that journey of faith. But it wasn't until many years later that I really began to get it, what it actually means, and that I realized that the stories in the Bible are well, they're great and all that, but they're just really to give you a bit of an idea, and
Hmm.
especially that one, like Lot's wife, looking back. Well, it's not about, well, it is about looking back, but it's not. It's like the story of the boots. If we think of that, Lois and I had a cup of tea, we talked to God for a few minutes, then we went on talking about the next project or whatever it was, knowing
Hmm.
that once we had brought it to his attention, we let it go, and then we give thanks having received it. Oh, well, we hadn't received it yet.
Hmm.
You give thanks and give praise to God for having brought it to you or your
Hmm.
situation.
Hmm.
And honestly, it's always just a few hours later. The maximum it's ever been is 24 hours. And it just happens. Now, you don't do it for foolishness for yourself or for
Yeah.
winning the lottery. That would be evil. And I'll tell you, I
Yeah.
was tested on one occasion like that. On one occasion, a friend of mine many years ago said to me, Phyllis, why don't you ask God for the six numbers for the 649? It was years ago. It was when it came out first. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. Oh, no, no. And she says, "Oh, go on. God would want you to have money. God would want you to be this, that, and the other. The good and you can just
Yeah.
hear it in your head."
You've got the
So
little devil and everything
oh,
and the angel on the
absolutely
other
true.
side here.
Absolutely true. So anyway, I had these six numbers, and we were in Milton at the time, and there was a wee mall there, and there was a shop that sold newspapers and tobacco and stuff. And she's sitting on the stool outside, and I go to walk into the shop, and as soon as I put my one foot in, this hand went oh and pushed me right, but nearly that I fell. And one in the back pushed me into the shop. Now she's watching this, and another one pushed me out. And she says, "What on earth is going on, Phyllis?" I backed up and I sat on the bench. I said, we're not doing this." And the next night I would have won $500,000. Now that was over 20 years ago. And I said, "I am so thankful, God, that I didn't do that. Thank you. Thank you."
Hmm.
So I realized then you don't muck
Hmm.
with it. You don't ever, ever, ever use it for anything like that, except if it's for, you know, um, something profound, something, community, like this family, for instance, now,
Yeah.
like I would feel driven, like as soon as I heard that, I felt driven to get involved, and I could see a community meetings and standing up there and reaching out and that
Hmm.
sort of thing,
Yeah.
getting involved that way. And I find when I do God's work like that, I get this energy through me that is powerful. And I
Hmm.
never use notes ever. I never have,
Never.
never. And I was asked to speak at the Women Who Give, I think that's what you call them, last year at the big golf club in town out there. I
Hmm.
think it's 400 business women, and they give twice a year, and it's $40,000. So for the first time, they divided it into between us and one of the new food banks. And
Hmm.
so I was asked to speak, and of course I got up and spoke, and I couldn't tell you what I said because I never know what's coming. And so this lady approached me after and she said, "I'm a life coach." And she said, "I've never seen the like of that." And I just know if people cry, well, then it's obviously touched their soul and that's okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
But she said, she said, I've never seen it like it. I'm just saying, well, it's a God thing. I just have simple faith and I step back.
Hmm.
That sounds silly, but
No, it doesn't sound silly.
that's who
It's
I am. And that's what I do. And hopefully will continue to do until God
hmm.
calls me. And I would love a world where there was no greed. I'd love a world where there wasn't the pain and suffering that there is.
Hmm.
And I believe, I was saying to Brian yesterday, you look around us and everything's a miracle. Every
Hmm.
single, look at all the stuff in nature. We
Oh
couldn't make
yeah.
one leaf, we couldn't make anything. And we're so spoiled. And living here, we live in a great country with the
Hmm.
cleanest water in the world right under our feet. You look up at the blue clouds, and as women, we are able to speak here without being stoned to death or having to wear a hijab or whatever it else is,
Hmm.
and we're free.
Hmm.
To have a job, to drive a car, to do all the things that women are not allowed to do in other countries. And so
Exactly.
I feel that we're very privileged.
Hmm.
And I won the Sovereign's Award from Her Majesty the Queen, and
Oh.
the the government asked me if I would sit on if I'd become a judge, robes and all, and sit uh, on the courts for the people coming into the country where they swear into Canada and that. So
Hmm.
yes, I was doing that, and then we stopped that because of COVID. The world stopped because of COVID. And
That's true.
last 2 years ago, we won the June Callwood Award, a very prestigious,
Hmm.
amazing woman. And I was
Truly
privileged
was.
to hear the stories of five other people who were just amazing across the country. There was one couple who had a wee private plane, him and his wife, and they would fly people across Canada free of charge to get surgery. That maybe needed a different type of surgery where it was only done out in Vancouver or done somewhere else, and
Hmm.
they would pay to get them. Or there was women who had been abused, and they set up places to help other women and stuff. So it was just amazing. So there are amazing people around, and
Hmm.
it felt very humbling, very,
Yeah.
and that's how I feel about what we do. I feel humble and just privileged and grateful for everything,
Hmm. And you're
honestly.
certainly blessed.
Well, I do my best. I have a simple faith, and I was raised by a wonderful mother. We were all poor. Everybody in Ireland was poor. And you talked about your mommy with the newspaper. Well, I was one
Hmm.
of those children. We all had
Hmm.
holes in our shoes, and we used to take the newspaper and you'd have it about 8 layers thick, and you put it in
Yeah.
your shoe, and that actually kept your feet warm. And then when
Hmm.
the wet came through eventually, well, you just replaced it. And my first purchased dress was my wedding dress.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, wow. See,
Yeah.
my mom had her wedding dress made,
Uh-huh.
and but she used to make our clothes because she was a single mother
Uh-huh.
and she couldn't afford to go out and buy, the
Well, mommy
fashion
did the
of the
same.
day.
That's right.
So she made what she made. And
That's right.
I have to say, I was always ungrateful
Yeah.
until my grandmother put the boots to me and told me what all that, every little bit of clothing that I ever got,
Uh-huh.
it was made by my mom.
That's
And
right.
I thought
Mine's
my
the
mom went
same.
out and bought it. And I didn't know that. She got
No.
scraps of material from people that
Yep.
gave it to her.
Yep.
And, like when we were
That's
younger, she made sure that we were fed before she
yes.
did. She would eat. Her whole thing was that she would have a peck of potatoes.
Yes.
That's all she would eat was potatoes. And she made sure that my sister and I had meat
Yes.
and potatoes and
Yes.
vegetables.
Yes.
And sometimes she'd go without. So I mean, like the
Uh-huh.
women of the day
Oh,
were
oh,
stronger
amazing.
and just
Amazing women.
they
Amazing.
were.
They were amazing. They were warriors in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful,
Mm-hmm.
powerful women who were
Mm-hmm.
selfless, very giving, very compassionate. My
Mm-hmm.
mother was the same. Mommy would get wee bits of material at the market and make us, and Daddy's clothes she even made. And Daddy was a policeman, he was a detective, and she'd make us, honestly, she did. And anything that Daddy had worn out, she'd cut down for my two brothers and
Yep.
make them. And we got one pair of sandals, and that had to do us. And that's when the holes would come after like 9 months and you're stuffing the newspaper. And I remember Daddy with the last and putting the boys' shoes with a wee bit of leather and tacking tacks round
Mm-hmm.
them. I remember as a child thinking, oh, I'm glad I don't have to wear that. I'll just wear my sandals with the holes because they look
Mm-hmm.
so funky. So
Yeah.
but you know what? Everybody was the same. And
Mm-hmm.
mommy used to send me to get this to the butchers. And we never had meat. And she'd say, Philly, get a big marrow bone. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd get a big marrow bone, like a big, big bone. And that went in the tall pot. And Daddy grew vegetables. Everybody grew vegetables. And that went
Mm-hmm.
in. So we lived on soup. And the
Mm-hmm.
nourishment came out of the marrow bone.
Marrow.
And
Mm-hmm.
then you had wheat and bannock. And that to this day is the main bread in Ireland. And it was oatmeal and a bit of flour and fresh buttermilk in it. No raising agent of any kind. So it's a salt, it's actually a lovely flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd have that, and that would be taken out to the men in the field, because it filled them up. It's also
Mm-hmm.
healthy.
Yep.
And nothing was processed, remember, in those years. There was none of this
No.
process.
Oh gosh, no. There was nothing
Everything was
like you
simple.
just. Yep.
It was plain, it was grown. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the rates of cancer that there is today as opposed to then, it's
Mm.
it's
Much
all
higher.
much,
Well, it's
much
all processed food nowadays. It's
less
like,
food.
and it's not that good for you. It's like
No,
you're just it's all salt and it's all these chemicals and
that's it.
I mean, what is it doing to our body and our minds?
Well, this is it. I read an article where they showed a bag of spinach from 10 years ago, and it looked like the same bag of spinach. But it said that you'd have to eat 10 bags of that spinach, that today is spinach, to get the nourishment out of that one bag 10 years ago. Now,
Oh,
that's
wow.
frightening.
That is.
So that just shows you that there's practically
Mhm.
no nourishment in the bag of
And
spinach you're buying now. You'd have to
oh,
eat 10
that's
that to get the same as that one 10 year, because it's all fake. I mean, it's
yeah.
there and you can see it and you can eat it, but
And you
it's
can
not,
taste it too.
you
It's
can
not the
taste
same
it.
as the spinach that I had
Not.
when I was a kid.
It's not. No. And so it's going back. It's people going back now to growing a bit of their own vegetables or
Hmm.
getting from a local farmer, that
Hmm.
that's no hasn't been processed, and making do with whatever there is growing that week or whatever there is, and
Hmm.
um uh and making a broth,
Hmm.
throwing in a few vegetables and not having the processed food,
No.
not having it, and going back to the old ways and
Yeah.
making the wheat and bannock and doing the stuff like that and the way it
and
was.
making and making the homemade soups and
Yes,
like with the
yes,
potatoes and the veg and like
yes,
big chunks of it, not just like these little
that's
pieces
it.
of
Well,
crap
that's
that
what
they
we
get.
did yesterday. The slow cookers, I think, are wonderful. I
Aren't
love the
they?
bags of, the old-fashioned carrots you get now that have the dark colors in them and that. They're
Yeah.
not, well, they're so sweet. They are actually delicious. And I
Okay.
yesterday took a bag of them, cut them in big chunks, put them in the slow cooker with it. Now, I did use a box of chicken, but it was one without salt in that. It was
Mhm.
no garbage in it, of chicken broth, put it in the slow cooker with that, and I had parsnip, which is lovely.
Ooh.
A three parts, chopped it in big chunks and put it in, left it for about 4 hours. And I had a barbecue piece of barbecue chicken, and then I tore it up, and that was our dinner last night. And that was just the carrots, but the flavor was delicious. There was nothing
Yeah.
added to it. And the parsnip, which is sweet, and the lovely flavor. You could have drank the broth, which I actually did, and the chicken. And what's wrong
A
with that?
simple meal, but it's a filling meal. That's the
Simple,
thing.
and it's healthy.
Hmm.
If we went back to using the bone marrow, um, I take the bone marrow out for my wee dog, wee Maisie, but we should be putting the bone marrow in the soup. When we're
Hmm.
making it, throw a couple of those bones in, make your soup, let the bone marrow come out, and they
Hmm.
charge a fortune in the restaurants for that. And
Oh
yet we can
yeah.
do it for next to nothing. It's a
Hmm.
matter of thinking differently, you know.
Yeah, it's a mindset that everybody's got to get back to thinking. We've got to reverse ourselves. We've got to go
That's it
back
exactly. It's exactly right.
back to like the 40s, the 50s, and the
Yes.
60s, where everything was more simple.
That's right, exactly. And it's not about show and it's not about status and it's not about any of that stuff. It means nothing.
Mm-mm.
Daddy used to say to me, Philly, there's no pockets in a shroud. You can't take anything with you, dear. And
Mm.
my friend that was a minister always said, Phyllis, I've buried a lot of people and I've never seen a U-Haul truck behind a hearse. It's true.
It's very true. Now watch, we'll see you all behind a hearse one day. But it
That's
is true. You can't take it with you. And I mean, like, honestly.
It's not about status. It's not about any of that. And
Mm-mm.
I used to feel sorry for people that were so-called born with a silver spoon in their mouth. When you hear about these spoiled children, well, what does that mean, spoiled? Well, you think, well, they're just brats. But actually, to spoil a child is to deprive a child of experiences they should have,
Hmm.
depriving them of the climbing the trees, depriving them of all that, and depriving them of wishing for something and hoping and longing for it, and maybe never getting it,
Hmm.
dreaming about it and thinking about it and growing towards it, instead of just saying, all right, let's go and buy it. Or
Yeah.
because you feel guilty, you go out and buy them, and they have this wants list. That gets me at Christmas. I've
Oh,
got my wants list. If we
it's
had
not
said
just
that,
one page, it's like 10 pages.
yeah, well, you see, it's so wrong.
Hmm.
It's all for the wrong reasons. Well, as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned, anyway.
And they want every single thing on there.
Oh, I
It's
will. It's
not, they
just
don't,
not.
I
No.
mean, I remember like years ago, like when I was growing up, I asked for an organ. That was the only thing I ever wanted was an
Yes.
organ. Never got it.
No.
I could get it now if I wanted to. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
able to,
Yeah.
but it wasn't the same. It
No.
wouldn't be the same.
No.
But I never really I got things that were a necessity. Like you
Yes.
got your socks, you got your underwear,
Yes.
you got clothing. You might
Uh-huh.
get a toy or two,
That's
but
it.
you didn't get a lot. It wasn't
No,
like
you didn't.
stacks and stacks of
No, none
presents
of that
underneath the
at all.
Christmas tree. No.
No, we got one toy and we got maybe a selection box, it was called. It was like a Cadbury selection. And there was two or three wee bars of chocolate and like a
Hmm.
pencil or something in it. And you always got a wee mandarin orange or something.
Yeah.
And that was put in because there were no oranges. In
No.
Ireland after the war, we were born after the war, there was nothing like that. So you got that. And but it was, honestly, when you think about it, it was practically nothing. But we were
Hmm.
delighted because we didn't know any different. We didn't expect anything else.
Hmm.
But see, it's all back to front.
Hmm.
And it's sad in many ways, but
And this goes back to with the kids too, the ones that don't have anything
yes,
and the ones that do have everything, and they're bringing all these things in, and they're like, look at what I got for Christmas, and it's like
yes,
these poor wee ones that don't get that
that's
excitement
right.
and
Oh,
that
that's
thrill
right.
and that Xbox or PS4 or
Whatever.
whatever the heck they've got, or the newest iPhone, which I
That's
don't
right.
have.
No, I don't have either. Doesn't matter. I manage fine. No,
Yeah.
it isn't. I'm no, it's all, I feel sorry for the children. I feel sorry for the youth of today. I truly
Hmm.
do. Honestly, Laurie, I truly do.
Hmm.
I think that so many of them are lost. You look on the news the other night, they were saying about the number that are dying of drug overdoses in Canada.
Hmm.
I think it's is it eight a day? Is it eight a day? I think they
I
said.
think it is. Yeah.
56. Uh-huh. It's actually
It's
thousands
horrendous.
every year of young people whose lives won't continue, who won't get married, won't have families, children won't be born. Like it's just awful through
Hmm.
being stupid, doing silly things because they don't
Hmm.
have the grounding, they don't have that stability. And I think, unfortunately, in so few homes today, do the families sit round the table in the evening. There's no
No.
family talking, there's none of that anymore. And so the children don't get that. And that buying them things doesn't equate to that.
No.
Just doesn't,
It
in my
doesn't
mind.
equate to love.
No, it doesn't, love it. It really doesn't. And sometimes love is tough and it's hard.
Hmm.
It's not the easiest thing in the world. And yeah, it's it's a different world. Not
It is.
necessarily a better world. It is in
No.
many ways, medically and that with and technologically, of course, but in many ways it's not. And you look
No.
at the empty churches and you look at people are lost.
Hmm.
And yet my granddaughter Megan, they live in Saint Lazare in Quebec, and she goes to a church that's absolutely packed. If you don't get there in time, you won't get a seat.
Oh,
And
you're
it's
kidding.
packed to the walls with young people, absolutely thriving with young people.
Oh,
So we're
wow.
hoping to go up next week. She's due to have a baby in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm going to go to the church and I'm going to witness it myself to see just the
Find out
difference.
how they do it, because I am trying to pack two churches with people. I go to one church that I preach at. It's Atherley and
Yes.
Atherley United, and
Right.
they've got maybe four people.
Oh, the wee pets. Oh,
And then I go to the next one, which is Brecon United,
yes. I know
and
Brecken.
there's about 24 to 30,
Yeah.
depending on the day.
Yeah.
And they're
No
looking,
young people.
they, no, none,
No, I know that.
none. And like we're racking our brains trying to figure out how we can get people in. I
Well,
mean,
I would say I remember having a chat with Lois because it's the same up here,
hmm.
and I remember having a chat with Lois and saying, Lois, because she said to me, Philly, what would you do if you were here at the minister? I said, honestly, Lois, you know me, I don't follow the rules, and I don't. I mean, I know the rule book's there and all that, but you
Yeah,
look at how the rules aren't working, so you
yeah.
say, okay, well, we'll have to take a different. So what I would do personally, I would make sure I had a whole bunch of business cards printed out and I would take one day a week. And say, for instance, we're talking about up there, and I would spend that whole day going to different streets in, say, Victoria Harbour or
Hmm.
Wabasheen, or I'd take it bit by bit by bit. I'd
Yeah.
actually knock on the doors. First of all, I'd do the businesses, the shops especially, get
Hmm.
to know the people so that they'd wave at you, you'd wave back, and I'd say, this is who we are. This is who I am. What can I do for you today?
Hmm.
Is there anything? Can we help you? Um, so many people don't have cars,
Yeah.
especially the poor people don't have cars. So the children don't get to go to Sunday school or anything like that. And I said to Lois, when Brian and I lived in Ireland, we did a run out around the countryside for deaf people. And we brought them all into Belfast to a church specifically for the deaf, and then we'd run them all back again. But I said, Victoria Harbour, the port, it's only a few minutes from the church. We could go
Hmm.
down in our vans and bring families up and do that.
Hmm.
And I said, I'm willing to jump right on board. Let's do it.
Hmm.
But you've got others in the churches, and and you know what it's like. They think they own the
Hmm.
church, and you can't say, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, do I ever?
You know exactly. They think they own it, and can become absolutely so bad that they actually drive ministers out of the church.
Hmm.
And it's, well, to me, that's old screw tape.
Hmm.
That's have you ever read the screw tape letters?
No.
Yes, you should read the screw tape letters. It's only a tiny little book, and it makes you laugh. It's letters from a junior devil to a senior devil, and how old screw tape works. And I mean, it just makes you really loves churches, loves committees. Oh my goodness, does he ever love committees? He gets right involved there, and but it makes you laugh. But you can see how that works and why it works and why it's enabled to work,
Hmm.
because all the churches, especially today, should be exactly like Megan's church. They should be packed
Yeah.
with young people. So they're doing
Hmm.
something right and everybody else isn't,
Yeah,
because
that's
there's a
true.
huge need, huge need. But the families, think about, all right, mummies have to work out now because they
Hmm.
have to. The cost of everything, well, it's mental. The
Yeah,
cost of housing, they can't stay home. So they
they
have to
have
go
to
to
go out.
work. And the weekend, they have to do everything else. They have to do the laundry, they have to do the shopping, they have to take wee Joy to do his hockey or to this, that, or the other. And they're
Hmm.
just exhausted. So if
Hmm.
there's not something special through the week, or if there's not something at the church to draw them, to help the children, say, Mommy, we want to go, so and so's happening, then they don't go. And it doesn't
Hmm.
happen. And the children don't ever get to hear those special stories in the Bible. They don't ever get to hear the stuff that can hold them firm when the time comes for trouble in their life.
Hmm.
And I think that that's very sad. When I was young, in Ireland, and to this day in Ireland, the churches are the mainstay, and everything is run from the church. The Girls' Brigade, the Life Boys, everything that
Hmm.
you can think of is run out of your local church. And kids are so used to running in the churches. There's always children's voices, and they're happy places. So they're not just forlorn places you just go to for a funeral. It's not like that, Laurie. It's
Hmm.
not. And so, um, it could change around, but the hierarchy has to realize they're doing something wrong. My
Hmm.
uncle Bob was the Reverend R. Cunningham was a moderator of the United Church. He lived in Vancouver. He was an amazing
Hmm.
minister, amazing preacher, and uh, he was in a big posh church in Vancouver. And then we're all a very la-di-da, and the wealthy went. And then at night, lived in a big mansion and everything. So then at night, when the people didn't know what he was doing, he was dressed in rags and he was down with the drug addicts and the alcoholics. And he did that every night of the week, where the wealthy didn't know that he went. But that's where he did God's work. And he did it
And
because he
that's
had
where
once
it's
in his
needed.
youth had been an alcoholic.
Hmm.
And when he lived in Ireland, my daddy and his brothers used to go out to find Uncle Bob, and he'd be in the ditch drunk. And they were always bringing him home and bringing him home. And there was no electricity in those days, early
Hmm.
1900s. And this day they brought him back to the farm, and he tried so hard, and he fell on his knees with a candlelight, and he prayed to God and said, If you take this off me, Lord, I promise I will dedicate my life to you. He never drank a drop from that moment to the day he died, many, many years later. He became he did a doctor became a PhD in religion and all that stuff. He was an amazing minister. And when we were teens, we used to go to the big main hall in Belfast, packed on a Saturday night with all the young people. The music was amazing, and he could preach. Oh my glory, he was amazing. And then he got the call to Vancouver. And after he died, they had a memorial service in Belfast, and I sang at it. And you know what his favorite song was? Colonel Bogey. Colonel Bogey. And that other song, um, the one he used to love it. If I can help somebody when I walk along, then my living shall not be in vain.
Hmm.
If I can do God's work as I walk along, then my living. So I sang, and the place you couldn't even get standing room.
Oh
He was never
wow.
forgotten. And but he had been an alcoholic. And that's why every night he got into the old clothes and went down into the depths of hell and did
Hmm.
God's work. So when we talk about our experiences, we can relate back to that and what it was
Yeah.
like to have the holes in our shoes, or to not have this, that, or the other, and to
Hmm.
know what it felt like when we did get a little something, and to
Hmm.
take that and show that and want others to have that wonderful feeling, which is what we do with the children.
Hmm.
And and so That's my journey. That's our journey. And I couldn't do it without Brian. The first few years I did it on my own. Then my friend Joanne helped for a couple of years, and then she took a stroke and she's passed on now.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
so bit by bit, then, we have a small team around us,
Hmm.
and we do it. And as I got older, and some days I walk without pain, other days I'm crippled and I need sticks. But whatever it is, we'll get
Hmm.
around. And Brian has a purpose. We work
Hmm.
together, and we are a
You're a
team.
good team.
We're a
You are a
good
good
team,
team.
and we're married 58 years.
Oh, bless
58 years
you.
we're married. Yes, we are. Last month, 58 years married. The
Oh,
love of
you need to have a renewal of vows.
that would be lovely, actually. That would be a really lovely thing to do.
I can do them. I can
Yeah,
do
we
renewals.
should plan to do that. That would be lovely. That would be very nice. I got married, I was 19, and the only boyfriend, only man I ever loved in my life, apart from my daddy. And no, that would be lovely.
Mhm.
Yeah, we should plan that.
We'll
That
plan
would
it.
be really nice. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes,
Mhm.
that would
I
be,
think
that would
Brian
be.
would go for it too. And
Oh,
see
I
if,
think he would. Yes,
marry
he
you over
definitely would
all over again.
marry
See
me all
that little
over
spark.
again. I
Now,
know.
do you volunteers? Can people, contact you to help volunteer?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The best way to reach me is actually my email, which is my name with only one S in the middle. So it's Phylli and then Stanley. So it's Phyllis Stanley at gmail.com. And I
Okay.
do look at it several times a day. We live on the top of the hill here, Laurie, but
Hmm.
honestly, the bell service, our phones are not good. My phone is worse than Brian's. I don't know why. His is better. And so that's why the email works for some reason. And
Hmm.
that's the best way to reach me is email. And I will
Yeah.
respond immediately. And absolutely, we can always do with help. We had a big day there 2 or 3 weeks ago where we had our bag and tag, and
Hmm.
we had the village hall here in Victoria Harbour. And it was wonderful because it was air conditioned, and we had 17 people turned up. And we
Oh,
worked.
wonderful.
Do you know what was wonderful, Laurie? The men and the women worked shoulder to shoulder. Everybody sweating, everybody working hard, and it just all got done. We had all that big, those storage units all emptied, the bins all piled. The men were able to bring their big trailers, back it down to the hall, unload it. And Nadine, the barber, was there. She was
Hmm.
amazing. And we brought food and we let it all out. Everybody worked so hard. And we had was it 120 of our big zip bags. They're big, big. They look like a golf bag, a hockey bag, but they're
Oh, yeah.
colored. They're zipped. They're big bag. I'm at 120 of them, and they were delivered. They're gone. And then since then, when I took the stuff out of the tent I had here, so we've done another 80. So 200 big bags we've done in the last 4 weeks.
Oh,
That's a
wow.
lot. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Actually,
So
cash
you could
wise,
use volunteers.
it's over $100,000 retail in clothing we put out in
Oh,
the last
wow.
month. Yes.
Now, how about companies? Can they get involved?
Absolutely, they can. And that's what we really are short of. I'm no technocrat. I can send an email and stuff like that. I could never have set this up. Like I'm useless at this. I'm very out of the box. No, really, I am. And so it would be lovely to have people who could say, you know what, let me set up that for you. Let me do that. I love playing on the computer. I could put stuff on because I can't do that. I don't even know how
Hmm.
to put a picture on. So I'm not out of the box. No, I can't, seriously. But it would be lovely if we had people that were good at that, maybe retired from their job, and would love to do the like of that. Put pictures on the web, or uh, somebody who would contact different companies, and that would be wonderful. So yes, there was a couple of years ago we got a check from one of the car companies, but that was through a couple of employees that gathered $1,000. But the big
Yeah.
companies should be helping us because we're
Hmm.
local. We're helping the local
Exactly.
children,
Like that, we've
and
got
they're
enough
not.
car dealerships here,
Oh yes,
especially that one that has
I
about
know.
4 or 5 different car dealers.
Yes, I know.
Um, there's also Walmart
Well,
that,
Walmart used to give us 25% off many years ago, and then they stopped that because it now goes into a lottery and you have to have the rule. So the chances of ever getting anything are practically none. So
that's disgusting.
that is disgusting. And also, I went to the local grocery stores some years ago. We started a breakfast program in
Hmm.
the Harbour, and I wanted to see about getting. So I was looking about getting stuff, and I was told by several of the grocery stores that they couldn't even. One man said, "Phyllis, I can't even give you a lettuce leaf. Everything has to be sent back to Toronto and it's given out to the poor in Toronto." And that was from Food Basics. And also was told the same in Superstore. Yes. He said if
But
you'd
why
come down
wouldn't
10
they?
years, Nicole, we could have done it, would have gone locally, but now they're not allowed to. Everything has to go back to their main places, headquarters in Toronto. And it's given out in the places down there, the soup kitchens and everywhere. But up here, no,
We get nothing.
we get nothing.
That's again disgusting.
It is, but people don't know that. And so I had ladies baking muffins, and I'd hide healthy food in the muffins, and then we had to buy the stuff, and I got the chick. Do you know it took me over a month to get the children to drink milk? They'd never had milk.
Oh my
Imagine that.
heavens.
Never had got them, and then I got them to eat fruit or introduced vegetables bit by bit, and would have different days. Would have like an egg McMuffin with then would have fancy things, and I'd have milkshakes and all sorts of things. And I love the wee yogurt sticks that you can freeze,
Mm-hmm.
like a
Yeah.
lolly, things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and getting them to introduce. And then we could get nice wee squares of cheddar cheese that were in a thing. So we got them to eat cheese gradually, bit by bit, increasing. And the very poor children would come and they'd slinky, and I'd always have a bag done up quietly for them, and I would just slip it to them above and beyond what they're getting on their plate. And
Mm-hmm.
then they would, take it away with them. That's just not discussed with anybody. And I gave plates of muffins into the different classrooms and that. And so that that child or children would have wee snacks and would have a wee lunch. And so it's just, and last year I got a call from the big secondary school in town to say, Phyllis, can you really help us? This is the truth. There's now 1,200 students at that school. It was built for 800.
Mm-hmm.
We clothe at least 400 of them right up front. Their breakfast money they get from Eat Well to Excel and places like that. They get government money. They'd gone through a whole year's worth of money in under 4 months because the kids are coming in starving. And the numbers had tripled and quadrupled, and they had no more money. So I immediately got on the phone to the different service clubs, and they did jump in and help them. So that's how bad it is. People are deciding if they can pay their rent or if they can buy food.
Food. Yeah.
Serious.
Yeah.
It's really serious. So, and
It
how do
shouldn't come down to that.
it shouldn't, love. It shouldn't.
And our politicians, they
Oh,
don't seem to really care.
oh, listen.
And I'm not even going to get started on one
Let's not
politician that
let's not
I've had a
even go
problem
on to
with.
that because I'll tell you, I could kick a hole in the wall about that. I spent 3 months, Brian and I, preparing stuff for that particular situation, and was told not to go to the provincial federal government because they would deal with it well.
They don't deal with it.
They don't deal with
They just
anything, and unless
put it under the
it's to do with
covers.
votes for them, they're not
Hmm.
interested.
Exactly.
And so they were supposed to come to the bag and tag. They were supposed to do that. Absolutely not. And they don't like me because I speak out and I'm not a bit backward at coming for. I'm not a bit backward at talking to them and putting it
Hmm.
right plain to them. And
Hmm.
it makes me sick. I must be honest with you. I'm disgusted. I'm really,
Hmm.
Trudeau said he was giving 70 million this season for the poor. Where is the 70 million? Where's that gone? $70 million this in the last few months. I don't see
Yeah,
anything.
I don't see
No.
anything.
And we have people now living in tents that we didn't have last year
Hmm.
because the government has cut back several $100s in their
I
yearly allowance.
noticed a tent down at Little Lake Park.
Yes, well, I was involved in that with that family, and that little child in there, the 6 years of age, he had the body of a 3-year-old. He was filthy dirty, and I couldn't get sleeping for nights thinking about that little child. I went back to the school because he went to Monday's Bay. I said, we have to do something. That child's so malnourished, he's going to die. And so they did get them into one of the local motels. And it turns out that the government cut back $400 on their, I don't know whether it's ODSP or something, where they get
Hmm.
rent supplement. And they
Hmm.
just they have no way of paying.
Hmm.
And they're also educationally, um, some of them are educationally subnormal, and the
Hmm.
chances of getting a job are very small. But
Hmm.
if you contact, there's a girl called Daisy and a lady called Joanne, and they work for the um, Native Friendship Center, and they're
Hmm.
intake people. Now they help everybody, not just Native people. I didn't know
Hmm.
that until
I
recently.
didn't either. I thought they
Well,
just
they help everybody, and you just phone them, give them the information, and if you can get the family to them, they will
mhm.
really help. They really will
Oh,
help. They
that's
get
good.
government money, and they will honestly help. They're the only ones that I know that are actually physically doing anything. Isn't that
That's
tragic?
sad. That is so sad. It really is.
It is. It's tragic, and so we just have to keep our chin up. And there's a poem I would like to have read to you. I wonder where I have Brian. Could you look there, CeeLo, and get my poem? I think it might be in this file here. What did I just see? I would like to read that to you. If I could just read it. All right, I look here, see if it's here. It's a poem I wrote about the uh, sometimes I put things under. I took it with me. Maybe I'll read it to you another time. It talks about the children. That's not there. It talks about the children and how they feel and what they really dream about. And they dream about being ordinary. They dream about having a local job. They dream about having a home of their own and being a part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Hmm.
And the goal is always to get rid of to get the cycle of helplessness and hopelessness gone, rubbed out, erased, so that everybody reaches out and lifts up everybody else. And we're all equal. We're all the same. And we're blessed to have this time to walk this earth, to make a difference and to appreciate this journey, whatever it is. And that's what it's about.
That's
And it's been a privilege to talk to you. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
I you've always been on my mind ever since I had dropped off some stuff I think it's a couple of
Yeah,
years ago now.
yeah.
And I actually use you as an example many times in some of my sermons
All right.
and try to convince the the people there to, start something there,
Yes.
to get people involved, even if, because I know they do with the mitten tree where you bring in hats and mitts.
Yes.
It's a start, but I think we
Let's
could go
start.
further with that.
But I think also, Laurie, I think it would be a good idea if you were able to do maybe understanding, if you were to understand that they don't understand. Now, you one would say, well, what do you mean, Phyllis, they don't understand? They understand about hat and mitts and stuff, and they try, but they're very separated from the feelings of those people. They're very separated
Hmm.
from the understanding because they themselves have probably never suffered like that.
Hmm.
So if you were to sort of look at it slightly differently and think, okay, maybe my goal could be that I help them, educate them to understand what their journey is actually about,
Hmm.
what their journey is actually about. Instead of having to follow the normal stuff, things have to
Hmm.
be relatable to them, what they're living through today,
Yeah.
not 2000 years ago. I've had so many people say that to me, and I've had so many discussions with ministers or friends and whatever. Well, Phyllis, we have to follow the rule. I'd say, forget the rule book, set it up there in that
I
shelf. You
I
know, it
don't
has,
follow rules.
right.
And
So
it's
you
got
know
me
what I'm
into so
talking
much
about.
trouble.
That's okay. Trouble's good. And I'm always in trouble. So that's all right. And but you know what, Lovey? I believe if you and I'd be happy to come anytime you want and talk to your people. I'd be happy to
Hmm.
come.
Hmm.
No problem.
I'm gonna try and see if I can get something together and
Absolutely. Why not? Why don't we do
mhm,
something like that? But you know what? I think if you were to think about it, step back from it and say, here we have all these seats and they're empty, Lord. Help
mhm,
us to fill them with the folk that need to be filled. Help us to bring them in. Let the doors swing open. Fill it with your light and your love and your compassion. Bring them in. Do you know like
mhm.
that movie? Oh, your woman was in Sister Act, where she
Oh
was the
yeah.
man. Right.
Oh
Remember,
yeah.
she went out, she brought the
Whoopi Goldberg.
prostitutes in, she brought them all in. She had the great
Hmm.
upbeat music and all that. And music is wonderful. Music fills the soul,
Hmm.
it feeds the soul. And if you've got modern music, the young people will come. If you open
Yeah.
it up, if you bring them in, if you get out into the community and reach out and touch. You have to reach
Hmm.
out. You have to get into the community. Now, Brecken, it's quite a bit of a drive for you.
It
That's
is, yeah.
that's what a good close that tip, a good half hour, 40 minutes each way, is
Oh,
more.
it's like 40 minutes just a Aurelia,
It
and
is.
then it's
No,
another
it's quite a bit.
let's say I'm about an hour
You are about an
driving.
hour each way. And so
Hmm.
it's not really suitable for you to be going there and going door to door. So it's a wee bit awkward for you to be doing
Hmm.
that. But I think if you were to do a series of sort of lessons and taking a
Hmm.
portion of the Bible and keeping it really simple, you
Hmm.
know, what is love? and Jesus says about the most important thing is love, and talk to them about what that is, and talk to them and say, so and so, what do you feel love is? And get them to respond.
Hmm.
Draw them in. What does that mean? And so, how do you
Interactive.
feel about that? How do you feel about that? So, Jimmy, how do you think? And then just let them. And what about so and so? How do you feel about that? And get them sort of included. Draw them in where they can ask questions, and you can take 2 or 3 verses or a little chapter, and gradually, bit by bit, grow it where they're not embarrassed to question. That was things. You see, children were raised as. Were told children should be seen and not
And
heard.
not heard.
We were
Hmm.
told that probably every day.
Hmm.
And it's important to know your place. And your place was always holding the ladder for everybody else. It was
Hmm.
never on the ladder. So people were afraid, and especially of religion, they were afraid to question for more than one reason. Firstly, because they never felt worthy, they felt stupid. And I think the Catholic religion, I was told by many Catholic friends that they weren't allowed to read the Bible until a few years ago because they
Hmm.
weren't worthy, especially in Ireland. And then they were
Hmm.
only allowed to read the New Testament. I don't think many of them have ever read the Old Testament. So they don't know the stories, and they were kept in ignorance because it's a religion of fear.
Hmm.
And the religions put barriers, they put these, it's like curtains, net curtains. And the
Hmm.
people feel unworthy. And I want to take them right away, just rip them right down
Hmm.
and go back and think, I'm dealing with little children. How would I help
Get
little
back to the
children to
basics.
understand? And I honestly think that would work. And
Hmm.
take, that is the most important word is love. It's the most
Hmm.
powerful word in the universe. Word in the universe is the word love. And look at the different things. Bring the little passages out about love. What does that mean to you? And draw them in, and then
Hmm.
talk to them another time about understanding. What do you think your journey's about, Sammy? And what do you think, so and so? And how do you think that if and get them drawn absolutely like that? You'll get them telling somebody else about it, and they'll
Hmm.
start to come, and they'll start to come. And then as you get a few more younger people in, then you
Hmm.
talk about music and you
Hmm.
talk about upbeat music. Well, I know there'll always be a battle about that because the older folk only want the old hymns. But you
Hmm.
have to realize that all the churches are going to close. They're going to be bingo
Hmm.
halls or carpet factories or something because they can't
Or
keep
seniors' homes.
or see, that's exactly right.
Hmm.
Because they can't keep going. I would say 5 years, Vasey will be closed, if that. And maybe the wee
Well,
churches,
the Sacred Heart up the street, it
uh-huh,
closed.
it closed.
And,
But there isn't
you
the
know,
money coming in. They can't pay the overheads. They can't pay.
no,
And I was at speaking 2 weeks ago at the Presbyterian Church in the Harbour. That is one gorgeous church. Have
is
you ever?
it? I
It's
haven't
all
been inside it yet.
well,
I want to see it.
you'd love it. It's all cedar. The walls and the ceiling is all cedar. And when I went there the first time, I swear this is a true story. I walked in the main door and I was overwhelmed with the color of the wood. And I saw these red Christmas lights the whole way along at the top of the wall on either side. And so I came out and I put a beautiful glow onto the red wood. And I said to the minister, oh, I really love those lights. They show what I said, the red Christmas lights out there. She said, come over here. So I went over with her and she said, just repeat what you said to me. And I repeated, I didn't know what you was I repeated what I said. She said, Phyllis, I have to tell you that you're the only two that can see the Christmas lights. I said, what do you mean? She says, nobody else can see those lights. I'd never been in the church before, so I didn't know nobody else could see them. But there they were glowing. And she saw them. She's a German lady. And she's the mother. She's the woman that adopted Sarah. She's the woman that adopted Sarah, my Sarah.
Oh,
And God gifted her the gift of sight. And she could see them.
oh, I've got to go and see that church.
And
I
I was
loved,
there
I
two
love
weeks
it. I love
ago.
the inside of churches.
Oh,
You
you'd
know,
love
I
it.
just,
There's a feeling in it. I was speaking there 2 weeks ago. It was their missionary Sunday. Brian showed photographs. It went brilliantly. It was beautiful. But I walk in there and I feel I'm at home.
mhm,
You feel you've come home. You feel you've come home. And the ladies were so lovely. And they have the tea and everything. Oh, they were just a joy. So I gave them all these wee brooches. I pinned them on afterwards and held their hand afterward. They were just wonderful, wonderful. And I'm just thinking, Lord, this should be filled. The people in this community need to be here. We need to get out into the community and go and bring them in, bring the children in. Now, they have no minister anymore because there isn't the money. There's only about 20 people on a good day going. Now, the day I was there was about 40 people because I think friends had come from other churches and that.
mhm,
And but that will close, and that would be a dreadful shame because
Oh,
it's dead center of the town. It's
well, if they
perfect.
ever need a minister, I can always,
Well, they
on
bring
days that
ministers
I'm not
all
going out
the
to
time.
Brecken,
Well, you see, there isn't the money to pay a minister. It would,
I
I know. Listen, I would never
it's
charge for speaking. I've never once charged for speaking, and I just wouldn't do it. Uh, but they're wonderful. I'm telling you the God's truth, they're wonderful. And I just felt, I think I should be going here. I think God's bringing me here to this church. I felt that. I said to Brian, I think we're supposed to go to that church. It was just, yes, it was just the energy in it and coming out of the walls and the cedar wood. Oh, it's just beautiful. And there's no
I've got to go and
fancy
see it.
anything about it. It's the wood. You'd love it. It's wonderful.
The
And it's
church
right.
doesn't have to be fancy. I
Oh, it's
mean,
not fancy. It's just
the
beautiful.
fancy ones don't impress me.
No, it's not fancy. And there's a nice big room at the back. And that's where I met Sarah. And but those Christmas lights, and I was shocked that nobody else. I said, but they're out there. They were all lit up, these red Christmas lights, the whole way strung along.
And nobody else can see them.
So what do you make of that?
That is so bizarre. Now I'm going to have to definitely go and see if I can see the lights.
I didn't know any different to see. I didn't know any different, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know not to see them. I
Well,
just
you've been
walked in.
gifted.
Huh?
You've been gifted by God in
Yeah.
so many ways, and that is just one of the many ways.
Mm, yeah. Well,
You
it's a
truly are.
responsibility. Yes, it's a responsibility. And I was given some spiritual gifts, and Mummy had them too, and my grandmother had them. It's an Irish thing. And when you give it all back to God and when you really believe and you just love the opportunity and you thank God every
Mhm.
morning you're waking up. And I used to teach meditation, and one of the things I would say to people is this, just a simple meditation. When you get out of bed in the morning and you sit in that toilet, everybody goes to the toilet. Shut the door. Sometimes for families, it's the only time you get private in the day.
Yeah, that's
Shut
true.
that door and sit there for 5 minutes. And less than five doesn't really work, and you don't need more than five. But in that 5 minutes, you're sitting there quietly. You're going to spend that time giving thanks. And it doesn't matter. You don't need to pray or anything. You just give thanks for the toilet, for the roof above your head, for you name it. And the more you give thanks, the more will come. And what
Hmm.
that's doing actually, Laurie, is it's changing your vibration. And it's
Hmm.
like turning a radio from an AM to an FM. And because our brain is magnetic, it turns
Hmm.
it up like that, and then it draws the same number to us. So
Hmm.
that day, when you get up off that toilet and go out into the world, you're drawing that number to you instead of that number down there. And
Hmm.
it just works. And I say to people, promise yourself you'll do it for a week. And after 3 days, expect to see subtle differences. And what the people all say is they notice their senses more heightened, their taste, their hearing, their sight. They
Hmm.
notice things differently. They just, yes, that's it. The first thing. And then they just feel better. They feel just lighter about themselves. They feel happier. They feel glad to be, and they don't really understand physics, and they don't need to know the science behind it. They
Hmm.
just need to know to do this. And the
Hmm.
nuns, the priests, and nuns do it 3 times a day. They have a very fancy name for it, but that's just what it is.
Hmm.
And somebody said to me, "We'll call it the bog meditation because the Irish bog, we'll call going to the toilet." So I just said, "Well, it's not very ladylike to call it the bog." But anyway, when you go to the toilet, do that 5 minutes giving thanks. And that's what you're doing. And if you can't do anything else, just do that. Just do that. And I promise it makes a difference. It truly, truly does.
So now we're all going to have to sit on our toilet and give
Sit in the
thanks.
toilet, and everybody goes there first thing in the morning. So you tell your people to do that. I suggest it, and I promise you will notice a difference. And if
I'll have
anybody
to do
wants to
that.
reach me, email me, or you can phone me. And O'Brien's phone's the best. 705-529-9866 is his number. But the email, honestly, and I will get back to everybody. It's not a problem.
Hmm.
But
Well, I'll also put that in the bottom part of the YouTube thing where it's got the thing. I'll put your all your information down there as well.
all right. So you you
And
you put this. Does this go on YouTube? Does
hmm
this?
it's going on YouTube.
Oh my goodness. Oh dear.
I've only got a small following, but
Oh,
I'm
it
hoping
doesn't
it'll
matter.
grow.
Will grow. It
It
will
will.
grow. So visualize it. Visualize it like this. Visualize it much bigger like that. And you have a beautiful aura. You have a beautiful energy about you. You do. You have a beautiful aura, and I think you'll
Today I
see
look
that
like
with time.
what's his face's mother,
You do not.
Keith Richards. My
No,
hair just went all over the place.
nothing wrong with you. You've got a beautiful glow about you, a beautiful pink glow, and you're a beautiful soul. And you haven't had life easy, but then again,
Nobody
that's
has.
that's a privilege.
Hmm.
The underprivileged are the ones that have had it easy. So things
Hmm.
are back to front,
Yeah,
back to front.
it's very
And
true.
so we get joy out of the little things, and aren't we? Isn't
Hmm.
that great? That's
Oh
wonderful.
yeah,
But I'd like, where do you live? Do you live in locally? Do you live in,
I live in Port.
all right, well, you know where we live. Well, why
Yes,
don't
I've been
you
to
pop
your
up for a
place.
cup of tea? Well, why did you pop
I
up
will.
for,
I will.
please
Every
do.
time I drive by on Sunday morning, I'm thinking I got to go to Phyllis's because here
You
I
should
turn
go
here
and
and then I
you're
just
more
come
than
down the
welcome.
street.
Come in any time. The kettle's never off. And I mean, we're Irish. Come on.
I
Teapot's never
will.
off. And I've got a drawer full of herbal teas because I
Oh,
drink
beautiful.
herbal teas. And let's do stuff.
We
Let's
will.
help.
Yeah,
Let's reach out. Let's make a difference. Let's
we
get out
will.
and let's reach out more. Let's get out and help people to lift their head high and to feel
Hmm.
good and to look at life somewhat differently and
Hmm.
not filled with plum, poor little old me. You
Yeah,
know, had somebody say to me
we got
today,
to
"Oh,
turn it around.
turn it around." And if I have to use the cane or if I have to use that, just laugh at it and say, "Oh, that's no problem." Laugh at it and look back and say, "I'm grateful for this moment in time.
Hmm.
Let's make today smile because that smile can change your life." Isn't that
Hmm.
right?
Oh, very much so.
Very
And if
much so.
somebody comes, I've had people come up to me in Walmart and they say, "Could you say a prayer for me?"
Yes, right there and then. Absolutely.
Like, sure.
That's exactly right. Why not? Never be embarrassed. I'll tell
No,
you what
gosh,
happened to
no.
me. Do you know what happened to me one time? I was in food basics. My son John was with me. One of the grandchildren I had in the buggy, and we were at the counter at the till. John's packing the boxes down here, and all of a sudden, God spoke to my heart and he said, "There's a little lady behind you, and I want you to give her a great big hug from me." And I turned round, and right enough, there was a little wee lady up to my shoulder with her white permed hair. She was just like a wee feather, bless her. And I looked at my son, and I knew rightly he was thinking, "Oh, what's she going to do?" I got that look. And all of a sudden, the voice said again, "Do it now." So the shop was packed. It was a Thursday night, about 8 o'clock. And I could tell the girl behind the till had a sore back and her feet were killing her. And she wasn't in a good mood. She just wanted to get home. So I turned around and I put my arms around this wee lady and I just hugged her and I whispered into her wee ear and I said, "Lovey, Jesus just spoke to me and he asked me to give you a great big hug from him and to tell you how much he loves you." You could have heard a pin drop and she started bawling. And she said, "I
Oh,
buried my husband of 56 years yesterday and I just
oh,
decided to go home and take my own life."
oh my heavens.
How would I have known that? I'd never met that
You
lady
wouldn't.
before in my life. But you know what? God knew. And I
Oh
said, "Pet,
my.
this isn't your time. And
No.
Jesus understands what's in your heart. And you have work still to do, lovey. He's right
Hmm.
with you, pet. Right in this grocery store, right beside you." And it was really him hugging you. He just used my body. And my son
Wow.
witnessed that, and the whole shop witnessed it. But they didn't hear what I said because I said it
Yeah,
quietly to her ear.
yeah.
But I didn't see that lady before he spoke to me. It wasn't until I turned round and there she was. Now, you see, think about that for a moment, Laurie.
Hmm.
Think about how Screwcape could jump in there and say, "Oh, you're not going to do that in front of everybody. Look at the shop. They're all going to look at. You're going to feel like a complete idiot." That woman could kick you in the shin and say, "Don't touch me." There's a whole lot of things you could put there.
Hmm.
But you
Yeah,
see, if you step through the embarrassment, you just say, "No problem," and just do it.
yeah.
So you let the barriers down, right?
Hmm.
It's like a bud, a rosebud. So many
Hmm.
people keep those bits, those leaves up like that, and they never let them down. They
Yeah.
want to be secure and safe, so we're keeping right, but they never grow, they never learn. But when you take the leaves, the petals come down. Yes, you're vulnerable, but
Hmm.
look at the perfume of that rose. And the
Hmm.
perfume is the joy you bring to other souls.
Hmm. That's
That's
true.
it.
Well, my grandmother always says when she was out shopping with us, she would sit down on the bench and
Mm-hmm.
somebody would inevitably come and talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Me, the same thing.
Yes.
One day in Walmart, I was sitting there. My husband was, I think he went into the washroom or he went
Mm-hmm.
for a price check of something. And
Mm-hmm.
this gentleman asked if he could sit beside me.
Right.
And I said, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the seat. go for it. And he sat and told me his life. He
Yes.
sat and told me that, he was uh, an alcoholic and into drugs, and, he was, ready to just go.
Mm-hmm.
And his son came back into his life and took him out and brought him back up
Mm-hmm.
and gave him a place and a purpose to live.
Yes.
And I sat there and I just, things just kept flashing back. It's like,
Yeah.
as my grandmother said, if the devil came and sat down beside you, you talk to him as well.
That's exactly right.
And,
Oh,
this
that's
man,
exactly right.
he needed to talk.
That's it.
And,
And you were
I,
privileged to hear it. You were privileged to
mm-hmm,
be there and to listen and
yeah.
to see how, and he was meant to share that story.
And he actually, now he goes out downtown Midland,
Yes.
and he does the same thing,
Yes.
like goes down to the gutter and,
Uh-huh.
well, not the gutter, but gets
I
down
know.
to people's level
Yes, I
and
know.
talks to them, and with alcoholics and drug
That's
addicts and
wonderful.
that, and tries to convince them
But that's
to.
wonderful.
So he's got a mission himself,
Isn't that
and
wonderful?
it's a beautiful, it's,
It is.
like, you just never
He's
know.
making it count and he's giving of himself. He's letting
Hmm.
the petals down and he's giving of himself. And that's what it's about. And if we all did that, bless us all, there'd be no
Hmm.
wars, there'd be
Hmm.
no pain like that. And well, that would be just heaven,
Wouldn't it be?
wouldn't it? Yes.
It would just be a
Yeah,
lovely place to live.
yes, that's right. And so, yes, and when you look at the wars and you look what's going on and man's inhumanity to man, it's very tragic. And
It
I
is.
think most of it is to do with greed and try
Hmm.
control,
Hmm.
trying to have control through greed
Hmm.
and fear. And they use fear as a weapon. The
Yeah.
devil only needs fear. Fear is the opposite of faith, and they both can't coexist. It's like oil and water, and they can't
Hmm.
coexist. But if you were to read the screw tape letters, C.S. Lewis wrote them,
Mm.
and you can get them in the wee library down, or
Yeah.
sure, colored order them for you. Heather in there, she's lovely. And you need to read them, and you'll have a good laugh, and you can read them on the toilet. They're great toilet reading. They're great, and you always laugh because they're nearly comedic, but you can see how the devil operates, right?
Yeah.
And you
Hmm.
can see it in your everyday life, especially with committees and all that
Hmm.
jazz.
Politicians and
Well, I know that. And I feel sorry for them because you think, when they die and they're going to be judged, especially with authoritarian type of positions, and power positions. And when they haven't used it for the right reason, they'll be judged so harshly.
hmm.
They will.
Yep,
When you think about that, it's sad. They
it
don't get it.
is.
They're very earthbound people.
Hmm. And it's I one day they're gonna open their eyes. They could easily, and as that old saying goes, we're all one step away from being out the door ourselves,
That's
out into the
exactly right.
streets,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
they can be as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there's no
And
doubt
then
about
what would they
it.
happen to them?
Oh, that's right. But they think of themselves as, well, it can't happen to me.
Hmm.
It can't happen to me.
Yeah,
Well, I'm better than that. I'm not. Actually, they don't question. I just don't think. I think that they're sometimes as thick as champ.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Champ is mashed potatoes with butter and green onions cut up through it. That's the Irish
Actually,
potato.
that actually
That's
tastes sounds really good.
It's very good, actually. It's very good. That's to this day. That's the main potato. The way potatoes are eaten. Yeah, you boil them and you don't cook the green onion. You chop a whole bunch of them up and you mash the potatoes with butter in it, and then you add them all at the end. And some people would have had bacon, but most families couldn't afford that, so you had to
Yeah,
chop, you
yeah,
know, and that was it. And that's how people lived.
yeah.
But
My mother lived on potatoes for
yes,
years. That was
well,
the running joke in
well,
our
that's the
families, peck of
that was the
potatoes.
main thing people lived on in
Hmm.
Ireland was potatoes, right?
Yep.
And that's how 1.5 million died, is where they weren't allowed to eat anything else. There was no
Yeah.
famine. You know that. There was no famine.
No.
There wasn't a famine. Elizabeth I wanted all the crops, wanted everything for her troops. And if you were caught even fishing, you were sent to Botany Bay or you were hung. And that one of the songs I sing, The Fields of Athenry, it's about the young man being off in the ship to Botany Bay because he stole some ears of corn for his child. So there was a blight on the potatoes and it killed people, killed 1.5 million people, but they weren't
Oh,
allowed to live on anything else. They weren't allowed to eat any vegetables or fruit or meat or any, they weren't allowed to even trap a rabbit or a hare. They would have been hung. Isn't that dreadful?
that is.
Huh.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it is. So
Well,
half the
it's
population of
just
the whole of Ireland died, and it's never come back to that number again. It's never come
never.
back to three. No,
Oh, wow.
it hasn't.
That's
It's
sad.
they're very, very old culture, very old culture, and they were like a little place floating out in the universe because they are an island. And up until about 25 years ago, you couldn't even buy dried spaghetti. It was very much just the old Irish Celtic culture. There wasn't anything, there was no Chinese food, there was nothing weird, nothing
Hmm.
different. It was mashed potato and just what you could grow and whatever. There was nothing that wasn't Irish cultural there.
Hmm.
And it's only in recent years that they've now got McDonald's and stuff, which is rubbish.
Hmm.
And it's become like everywhere else in the world. But the wee villages are still the same, and
Yeah.
but uh yeah, it was very special. And so people held their faith very close to them and they walked very close with God. And every street pretty well had a church and a pub in
Hmm.
the other corner. And every Sunday you'd see families all walking to church. Didn't matter what church it was, they were all walking to church and walking home, and everything was closed. And that's just the way it was until about 20 years ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
Ireland was way behind,
Hmm.
uh, you know, America, the Americas, much, we had no television, nobody had a phone. We were the only people in our house that eventually got a phone.
Oh,
Daddy was
wow.
the only one with a car. Nobody had anything. They didn't, honestly. So we all walked, rode a bicycle, or took the bus. And it's when you look back, I mean, I had a great childhood playing out, swinging around the lamppost with a rope and playing
Hmm.
with my friends, kick the can, one, two, three, red light, and all the wee games
Hmm.
we would play. And you would drop, or if you were hungry, you got a piece. It was known as a piece, and it was a piece of bread with butter and sugar. And you ate that or jam on it. That was a piece.
Hmm.
And you get mommy called you in and you had your big bowl of soup and your wheaten bread. And we all survived. There was no fat people. Everybody was
Nope.
healthy. Everybody was walked and they didn't eat junk. There was no such a thing as junk. There wasn't.
Yeah, that's sad nowadays. I mean, the
Yeah,
junk food that's
no
readily
junk food.
available, it just,
There was no junk food. And it was tea was the drink. There's no coffee. No
no,
coffee's the thing of just today. Coffee. And there wouldn't be drink coffee people the same as here. The
yeah,
teapot is still tea. And
yeah.
they drink several cups of tea every day. And it's still black tea, although probably the young people are into herbal stuff, but
Hmm.
it's very much the way it's always been. But I used to go home every year when mommy and daddy were both alive. Mommy lived to be nearly 98. We
Oh,
buried her
wow.
7 years ago, and uh, I hadn't been home since I buried her. And then we went home 2 years ago. And in that time, it's like it completely changed. When I went back for mommy's funeral, and I'd been home, just months before, because I went home and spent a month by her bedside and stuff. But anyway, and I'd been home every year, 18 months prior to that. It had always been pretty much the same, changing slightly. Well, all of a sudden, in that last 5 years in between, the number of cars had quadrupled, actually
Oh,
quadrupled.
wow.
And the roads are narrow. Like you've got the main
Yeah.
highway there, but and the wee country roads, they're tiny. And Brian and I, we couldn't, we decided, oh, we'll go down to Donegal or we'll go up to Port Rush or we'll go there. Well, you'd eventually drive there, but I promise you, you would not get parked anywhere. I mean, anywhere. And we would end up driving right back to my brother's again because we couldn't get parked. And the whole time we were there, I'm not joking you. I'm not joking you. It was so bad. And so I have a friend who's a local vet here, and she's from the south of Ireland. She's got married. She's in the Rumney Road vet there.
Hmm.
And I was saying to her, look, you go home every 3 months. I said, in the south of Ireland, is it this? Oh, she says, Phyllis, it's desperate. It's just as bad as in the north. Shocking. It's like everybody wants to be in Ireland, and they've got all these cars. And I mean, cars are twice the price there that they are here.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? And the gas is twice the price. It's a
Oh,
very,
wow.
very expensive cost of living. Oh, very high. You couldn't eat out. Oh, absolutely not.
Oh,
You
wow.
couldn't. No, you couldn't eat out. Brian and I went out one day, and I had a cup of coffee, a wee cup of coffee, and she gave me a wee sandwich, which I actually couldn't eat. It was so awful. It was supposed to be an Irish breakfast. It was terrible. It was two small slices of bacon, one sausage. I think there was one egg, and a couple of bits of toast. And we came to the till and it was almost £50, nearly $100. I'm not joking you. I simply, I couldn't believe. And I had opened the Tim Hortons shop on the way from the airport, and it
Oh,
was
you're
like
kidding.
£9 for a donut. It was like $20 for a donut, and it wasn't even fresh. It was like a stale donut. So
Oh
I said,
my.
"No, they'll be closed." She said,
Yeah,
"You
no
can't eat
kidding.
out at all. You can't eat out at all. You simply can't. You just
Oh my
can't.
heavens.
If a
That's
person goes
that's
over, they're better to
terrible.
go. They're better to go on an arranged trip where everything's
Yeah.
paid for, and your
Yeah.
hotel and everything. And yeah, that's the only way to go.
Oh
Unless
wow.
you're family there, and you're not.
Yeah.
You can just forget. Unless you're very, very wealthy.
Yeah,
It's
well.
no, no, I don't fall into that category.
No,
And that's
same
okay.
here.
No, it's no big deal. Anyway, lovey, have you any other
It's
questions?
no, I'm good. I will put this up. All I want to say is I hope you and Brian have a wonderful Thanksgiving and your trip. I hope it goes well and you're safe on your journey. And I will be coming for that cup of tea and we will sit down and we'll put a plan together.
We'll put a plan together. And what I've done
Hmm.
is I mentioned about that storage unit. Well, they were charging us $1,200 a year rent for that, and I really needed two of them. So I
Hmm.
just said, forget this. I'm buying two. So then
Yeah.
last week I bought two used ones. They've been delivered, and this last 2 or 3 days we've been painting the inside of them. So my son actually painted them. I got the sprayer yesterday, and they're spraying. He just did the floors for me. So the walls are all white, and the floors are done like a slate grey. So we'll be able to bring our bins all up from that storage unit and put them
Hmm.
in there, and there'll be no more of that rent. And a
Oh,
friend of
that's good.
my daughter-in-law's is coming on Thursday to spray the outside, and but don't tell anybody we have them because they've now made a law that you're not allowed to have them. But at
Yeah.
least they can't see from the road that we have them, so they're sort of hidden in the bush.
Well, let's put it this way. What Tay don't know
That's
won't hurt.
exactly right. Exactly right. So don't put that in your YouTube.
Look at it here.
Okay. But anyway, so that's what we're doing, and uh yeah, we'll see. We're supposed to go up tomorrow, but we might just wait a few days. My granddaughter Megan, the one with the church that's busy, she's
Mhm.
about to have her baby 2 weeks from now. We might wait and go up in another couple of weeks because I'd hate to go up for a few days and come away and then miss seeing the baby. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Hmm.
She's a good girl. She's got four wee boys, and this is her fifth child. She's having a little girl. She homeschools
Oh,
her children. She's a great little mommy. She adores her
oh,
children. She loves God, and she's so just so filled with the joy of life, and she's amazing. And so this is her little girl she's having. So
oh, I'm so happy
I
for
think
her.
it might make sense to just because I'm not about to run up there again. It's a long old journey.
Yeah, it is.
And we'll go the back roads. We'll go up through the park and we'll go. I hate going on the motorway, Laura. I hate it.
Yeah.
So we'll go on the back roads and it'll take us 8 hours or whatever, but we'll take a picnic and we'll just enjoy the colors and take
Yeah.
our
Oh, because
time.
the colors, they're
They're
beautiful.
beautiful. So that's
Yeah.
what we do. And nothing fancy. Take our time and spend a little time. And the break would do us both good.
Hmm.
Do us both good
Yep.
because we've been really busy and the season's just starting. And
Starting. Yeah. You're going to be
yeah,
busy throughout. Yeah.
really busy. So, and that's okay.
Hmm.
That's what it's about. And we're here for people, and hopefully we'll be able to help those family that
Hmm.
were burned out and find
Yeah.
that they've got somewhere. They're not living in a tent because
Oh, I hope
I
not.
don't know where they are. They've no insurance, so I don't know if they've any money even for a motel. I don't know.
Oh, dear.
So, well, I'm sure. There was somebody put something on Facebook, and I
Yeah, they
responded
did.
immediately, and I did respond, and I asked them to contact me. I haven't heard anything yet, so I did say I did send them a personal message, and I said, look, we will wardrobe these people. I said, I
Hmm.
need you to call me. I need to know who you actually are, because it was
Hmm.
an odd name. It was Rock Jewel, which is an
Yeah.
odd name. I thought that was an odd name. Whether they're actually a jewel company, they sell jewels and they sell jewelry. So I
Mm.
just don't know who they are, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And we will definitely help, especially the children.
Yeah.
But we'll
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
help the parents
Yeah.
as well because of no clothes. So I don't
Oh,
know. And even if we have to come together as a community, we'll do what we can do to get them a place to stay and help
yeah.
them,
Yep.
right? So
Yeah.
that's
Just
what it's
put
about.
it out there
We will
and
love
it,
it.
yep.
So you know where
Put
we
it out
are,
there.
and
Yeah,
don't
I do.
hesitate to pop in, and you're
I
more than
won't.
welcome. I would love it. Just come by.
Yeah, I
Nothing
will
fancy.
definitely. And I always like as I say every Sunday I go to Breck and I'm driving by and it's like gotta go to see
You
Phyllis. Gotta go
should.
see
You just
Phyllis.
come. It's no big deal.
Cars, it's a new car, so it doesn't know the direction yet.
You're lucky. Our vehicle's about 15 years old, our van, but we just keep fixing it up and it do rightly.
You
Can't
know what?
afford to do
The old cars are the ones that really stick around. So
it. Well, we just keep fixing the engine and changing the oil every 5,000 kilometers. That's a big thing.
that's
And
all
just
you have to do.
this, there's not that many kilometers. It was my brother's, and it was only used for Brian built him a summer house here, and he only used it 2 or 3 weeks of the year. So it was in the garage most of the year. And then when he sold the house and went home, then I got the car. And so it's a van. So we've been using it to do us grand. I like the height of the seat. It's easier
Mm,
to get in, and they're comfortable leather seats, and you
yeah,
can heat the seat in the winter and stuff. They're just it's
yeah.
just and I couldn't care less what they look like. It's a vehicle that gets you places, and that's
Goes
all.
from point A to point B. That's all
That's
it
it.
needs to worry
That's it
about.
in a nutshell. Okay, lovey.
Okay.
I'll go
Thanks
and get
so
this
much,
man some date.
Phyllis.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely
Okay.
to chat, pet. And don't hesitate
Same.
ever to call me.
I
Okay?
won't. I won't.
God
Okay. You
bless
take
you.
care. God
Bye
bless.
bye,
Bye
love.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.